Mike had got used to being bullied. It began when he was around 5 by his 4 older sisters. They would boss him around, making him clean their rooms. When he was older, they would make him do their homework. This continued long after he had met Catherine that day in the garden. She would bully him too, but Catherine was his first real girlfriend, and he thought that she was the most beautiful girl in the grammar school. All his friends said so, and how jealous they were. 14 years later, and Mike was well used to Catherine's violent mood swings. She would hit him, and then he would forgive her. That's how it was, and he just accepted it. His sisters had often hit him and abused him, and Mike thought that this was what girls did to boys. The nurse turned him over so that she could wash his back. It was then that Mike noticed the headline in the newspaper. Murder suspect Ivy Goodwin in shock suicide. Ivy's dead? Shh now, the nurse said again. You're almost done. I want to know what happened to the woman in the paper. Let me see. You need to rest. Tell me, he insisted. The woman chose to join her daughter, they say. Jumped off Brighton Pier, the nurse replied. Makes sense, I suppose. She was her mother. Dead? Mike repeated again, picking up the newspaper. Did you know her? Not really, Mike said. I know of her. She gave a lecture at the college once. She's an occultist and medium. You go to college, do you? I did. The Arts College. Do you know it? Graduated last summer. Art today, said the nurse. What's it all about, eh? What is it about? Mike replied, but gave her no answer. So you paint? Literature. I studied literature. Boys study that, do they? Yes, why not? I want to teach. Oh, she said, you want to teach? Yes, I've applied for a position at the university. They're looking for someone to teach creative writing. The doors to the ward flung open. A nurse rattled her medicine trolley towards his bed and Mike started coughing. This one wants to be a teacher, she said to the other nurse who smiled, handing out several large pills in a small plastic cup. I thought all boys wanted to be footballers, she said, looking down at the end of Mike's bed. You'll need a new shirt. The nurse with the trolley moved to the next patient and Mike swallowed the pills. We managed to get some of the grass stains out, but not all the blood stains, the nurse said. Better buy another one. Another? He asked, looking at the tip of the hanger by his feet. Another football shirt. Oh, he said, and closed his eyes. Mike, just like Maximilian Chesterton, had held the local under-18 record for the most goals scored in the inter-school championships. Mike's achievement was that he had held the prize for 3 consecutive years, helped, it was said, by his physique, being the most strapping boy in his year. Mike, however, never letting his slimmer frame disadvantage him, could position the ball while running more accurately than anyone else. He could also take a penalty shot better than anyone else, and he could also run faster than any of the other boys in his year. No one could outrun him. No one other than Max, that was. But Max hadn't been at his school. It was only when they met at the art college that Mike felt himself lacking. Catherine had never taken Mike's love of the game seriously. She said it was silly to watch boys chasing after balls, just as it was pointless for dogs to chase after sticks. At school, Catherine had always thought boys were like dogs. Boys were dirty, smelly, overexcitable and difficult to control. There's nothing so daft as a boy getting excited about nothing, she'd say, after Mike had scored another great goal to the cheers of his classmates. After the game, walking Catherine home, Mike would argue with her about the dedication it takes to become a professional player. She once laughed at him and his England kit, the kit he had begged his parents to buy him, even though they couldn't afford it. And she got her girlfriends to laugh at him too, even some of the boys. Mike's friends joined in the ridicule just to impress the girls. Mike argued with Catherine constantly until she stopped coming to watch him practice, and eventually she stopped coming to the matches. But all this was during their school days, days long gone, and now they were both young adults, a time to be responsible. Mike coughed and reached for a glass of water on the bedside table. Was that what you boys were fighting about? Football? The nurse asked. Were you wearing the wrong shirt? Mike cleared his throat and said calmly, Perhaps. Blood oozed from his nose. You're having a nosebleed, she said, reaching for a cotton bud. She wiped his nose and then along the width of his mouth, sending a little blood to the corner of his lips. Mike smiled. The nurse could see that he had chipped a tooth. He was now watching the moths dive-bombing the light bulb over his bed, beating themselves up, and for what, Mike thought. What do they expect to achieve, he said, watching the larger moth exhaust itself. I hate nature. It's all so cruel. I have to change your sheets, she said. Can't have you lying on a blood stain. I don't like the winter either. Oh, I love the winter time, she replied. There's nothing so pretty as a pine tree in the winter snow, or the silhouette of an oak after its leaves have fallen. I hate the woods. Well, that's not surprising. The police said that they found you in the woods. I remember, he said. I can still smell it. Well, you're all nice and clean now, said the nurse, looking pleased with herself. Just the sheet to change. Mike didn't look up at her this time, afraid to catch her eye. He was feeling embarrassed. The nurse pulled back the curtains, and Mike saw that a policeman was standing by the window. Mike thought about Catherine and how she really did intend to beat him to death. His recollections of that late afternoon had started to sharpen. He remembered the fists pounding down on him. Mike turned over and buried his face in his pillow. Please send the policeman away. Just leave me alone, please, he said. I don't want to talk now. Of course. Now you must get some sleep. I hope Kath is okay, he said. She doesn't cope well on her own. Mike had now closed his eyes. He was thinking of Catherine and those wild, hateful eyes. The last look he could remember on her contorted face. And then he opened his eyes again and whispered, I think she wanted to kill me this time. But the nurse didn't hear. She was removing the sheet. Mike lay there thinking how it was all his fault. He was useless around the house, and although he tried his best, he couldn't help making mistakes. Mike knew that he had to work harder to become a better person. Catherine was trying to help him. He just had to do better. He also had to learn to spot the signs in time to retreat to a safe part of the house, to lock himself in somewhere until her rage simmered down. But Catherine gave few clues, and would go from happy to a blind fury instantaneously. What could he do but to man up to a beating? After all, he deserved it. Like before Christmas, when Catherine had taken him to watch Reservoir Dogs at the cinema. He should have known better than to criticise the screenplay. But one thing had changed in their relationship, for better or for worse. Ivy Godwin, that meddling no-good woman, was dead. End of chapter 10, part 2.